This is Viva Fry.
I'm Dr. Peter McCullough.
This is Tom Luongo.
This is Chuck Prodnick.
This is Alex Kreiner.
Hey, this is Brad Wall.
This is JP Sears.
Hi, this is Frank Peretti.
This is Tammy Peterson.
This is Danielle Smith.
This is James Lindsay.
Hey, this is Brett Kissel, and you're listening to the Shaun Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Happy Wednesday. How's everybody doing today? Well, it's grad season. You're probably looking for maybe something to buy, said grad. And I'm going to point to silver, gold, bull. With silver, needed to buy an ounce of gold now at 30-year highs. Silver is a bargain price when compared to gold. And it's the perfect time to not only protect a portion of your savings with silver, but maybe get some young kids thinking about some things that might do them well in life, I might add. And Silver Gold Bull. Well, they got a very wide variety of the best value silver for every budget. You can simply text or email Grahame for details. Whether you're a seasoned investor, new to precious metals, Grahame will work to answer all your questions and recommend the best products to meet your goals. And I keep pointing to grad. We did it a year ago. I thought it was a really, you're like, what the heck do I get this kid? And, well, we the brothers came together. We thought, yeah, some silver might be a cool thing to maybe get their brain ticking. And whether you're on silvergoldbull.ca or .com, just make sure to reference the Shaun Newman Podcast. Bow Valley Credit Union. They're your Alberta-regulated, fully serviced financial institution, and they're proud to present the first in Canada gold collateral lending. Now, if you can lend against your physical gold and silver for favorable rates, it's like a HELOC on your gold and silver. And if you don't got any physical gold or silver, they can help you get a loan to purchase that as well. Just email welcome@bowvalleycu.com. Say hello to Leanna. She can get your BVCU membership started today. All the details for Silver Gold Bull and Bow Valley Credit Union are both down in the show notes. So if you're struggling to find where to go, just head down there. We got a new one today, Diamond 7 Meats. Yeah, here in Lloydminster. If you're tired of the big chain stores, you can go discover a local Diamond 7 Meats, a family-run business you can trust serving our community here in Lloydminster and area for over 26 years. And in all the conversations I've had with their staff, they kept repeating how important their values of honesty and integrity while serving our community are to them. They offer all the cuts you'd find at any retail store, and their expert staff can help with, all the little questions that you probably don't ask. You roll into a store, you buy whatever cuts there, the sirloin or, on and on and on. But you can get fresh meat cut there. You can call them and decide on, how thick do you want your meat? How long should you cooking it? If you want it medium rare to, you like your stuff well done, they can walk you through a whole bunch of stuff, and they want it to just be like, hey, come on in, feel comfortable. We're not going to, judge if you don't know anything about meat. That's what they're there to help kind of alleviate some of the fear around, what to buy. And they want to make sure you leave satisfied with exactly what you love to put on the grill or any other way you cook it. Just call them, tell them what you like, and they'll cut fresh to your taste. Or you can just stop in and grab what they have in the freezer. You can find them on the north end of town here in Lloydminster on Highway 17 and 67th Street. Call Diamond 7 Meats today, 306-825-9718. Caleb Taves, Renegade Acres. Well, it's the community spotlight is what they always showcase, and I was just on a call with Silver Gold Bull, actually, talking about the Cornerstone Forum 2026. We're inching closer to at least having a date for you to pencil in your calendar. That will be coming back as me and Tom, you'll hear part of the conversation today. We talk about it, just a little piece of the Cornerstone Forum, and it is coming back in 2026. I assume there's going to be some names you recognize that are going to be there, but we'll keep you up to date on that. As far as Renegade Acres goes, if you're looking for concrete, specifically stamped concrete, because that's what the new studio has, and you're interested in that type of thing, look no further than Renegade Acres. I can't speak highly enough for what Caleb Taves and his group did in the new studio. Substack, it's free to subscribe to. We try and get out the week in review. I failed this past weekend. I talked about that, and I'm not being too hard on myself, but regardless, it's free to subscribe to. It's down in the show notes. And then we try and put some things behind the paywall for paid members. You can become a paid member and help support the podcast and everything we're trying to do here, and we greatly appreciate that. Either way, find the details down in the show notes. We do have the new studio coming here in 2025, and we're on hold for some wood. So it's getting closer. I'm excited to unveil it. I'm excited to have some in-person conversations here in 2025. I think it's going to be awesome. and look forward to showing you fine folks a little bit more about that. If you're listening or watching on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Rumble, X, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to leave a review. Make sure to hit retweet. Make sure to do all the things. If you're enjoying a podcast, make sure to share with a friend. Now, let's get on to that tale of the tape. He's a former research chemist, amateur dairy goat farmer, libertarian, and economist whose work can be found on Zero Hedge and Newsmax Media. He hosts the Gold, Goats, and Guns podcast. I'm talking about Tom Luongo. So buckle up. Here we go. Welcome to the podcast. I'm joined by Tom Luongo. Tom, thanks for hopping on.
Thank you, Shaun. How are you? We were supposed to do this with our normal, partner in crime, Alex Craner, but he's sadly not available today. So
we
you
said
just
so
get me,
for
folks, and all my crazy. So
all the people who are disappointed, just relax. We got Alex scheduled for Monday, so next Tuesday you're going to have Tom and Alex back on. We're going to get it before I head for holidays with the family. And if the world keeps going insane, which it probably will, I always wonder in July. So last year in July, Tom,
right,
we're driving in Idaho, and I have scheduled the entire month so I don't have to do a podcast, right? This is something new that I've done over the course of 3 years of full time, is I just need to take some time for family, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not going to do a podcast in July, and then we're in Idaho, and Trump gets shot. And my wife looks at me, and she's like, "It's okay. You can go do a podcast. I know you want to." And I'm like, I don't know. Like, what is going to happen that can, and so I look at this July and I'm like, nope, not doing it. And then I laugh. I go, I wonder what the world's going to do that's going to force me back into doing at least one podcast. Because I'm sure it's coming, and I'm sure I'm going to be on the horn to Tom or to whoever and be like, you should probably just hop on. We should probably have a quick podcast. So no fear, folks. Alex is coming on next week, and we're going to have a Tom Alex before July. Yeah, that's it. It's just one of the things about navigating schedules.
And I'll tell you this, I was chatting with Dexter White the other day, and a similar thing. He's like, a lot of podcasters take the summer off because it's not, they have to eventually take something. You have to do something. It's the same thing in markets, sell in May and come back after Labor Day, right? And he's saying to me, look, we've got stuff that we need to do, and I need you to pare back your schedule a little bit so that we can schedule some time to do the things that we want to do to upgrade the business and all that stuff, and the business development stuff that just needs to be done. And it's that we all know that's been on the back burner because the news cycle refuses to back off. And I'm just laughing. And I'm going on vacation with my family in July for 2 weeks. So we were up in Calgary, Camille and I spent an extra couple of days up there, but this time it's going to be like one of those last times when I can have just the three of us can go, because my daughter's now 19 and, a professional and all this stuff. So, you know what I mean? It's like, so this is one of the last hurrahs there. And I'm going to be gone the first half of the month. And I know I have to work, but I know that I can pare back my schedule, but there's going to be days where people are going to be screaming at me. Today is one of those days, and it is what it is, and we'll do our very best, folks, to and I can tell you that, Shaun, shit's going to pop off all throughout July.
Okay,
everything is coming together.
Before we get into Tom walking me through this, I want to make a mention, because you brought up Camille. I'm going to hold the cup up. Okay, this is not my favorite cup. This is a very nice cup. Camille is in the process of making my favorite cup because I had an accident in the house where I broke my favorite cup that I use every morning. I get up, I read the Bible, folks, and I have a coffee out of Kyle Koza. He got me a coffee maker that is fantastic. He comes to every show. Wonderful man. And I use one of Camille's. It's like the perfect size. I don't know how she did it. I don't know why I bought it back then, but I made a cup and I'm like, it's too small. And then I drank it. I'm like, this is the perfect size cup. Anyways, I knocked it out of the cupboard, smashed all over the floor, shed a tear because I'm like, come on. Now, this is a nice second cup. I brought it in here this morning because I knew you'd be smoking a cigar. I was going to have a coffee. Shout out to Camille because she makes wonderful things. And if you're at the Cornerstone Forum in 2026, she will no doubt be there selling these wonderful cups. And I can't speak highly enough about them because it has become my favorite cup. And I'm waiting for a new favorite cup. This one is, holding its place right now. So shout out to Camille for all of that. Now, all the niceties aside,
Thank you.
Tom, I don't know what I thought, but there's been a whole lot going on. Walk me through what you're seeing, and we'll see if I can, add in.
All right. Well, let's. The night that Israel attacked, I sat there like everybody else, stunned. I'm not gonna lie. My first reaction was, "Whoa, what in the actual just happened?" And then I started thinking it through, and I started looking at the destabilization of the game board and everything else, and I went, you know what? Yeah. In 48 hours, I tweeted this out. The world we thought we knew is going to be unrecognizable. Now, so many people then said nuclear bombs are going to fall and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, I didn't mean it that way, and I never meant it that way. The world that we thought we understood is gone. And it was really gone on 10/7, on October 7th, 2023. And this is the part of the end of that. So let's now try and understand everything that we thought we saw for the last few years, certainly going back to Trump first term and everything else. And when I'm done with that, I think you'll have a better understanding of why I think Trump is in control. Not, I wouldn't say control, but he has agency in this. That is not the current, oh my God, he's betraying MAGA and he's getting us involved in a land war in Asia. That is not what's happening here. So let's go back to the campaign. Let's just make it simple. What did Trump campaign on? What was he clear about? I will not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Full stop. Now, in a lot of people's minds, that means I'm going to betray Israel because in order to, I'm going to do X, and therefore, because here's the thing. A lot of people have conflated two very important issues: Iran nuclear ambitions and Israel's geopolitical ambitions, and that one stops the other. And that's the kind of standard Ron Paul style libertarian argument about why countries pursue nuclear weapons, which is to stop the quote unquote empire from attacking them, right? It's a form of mad, or whatever you want to put it. There's a bigger game at play than that one. Okay. And I've been trying to elucidate this. Alex and I have been talking about this for years. We've talked about it on your show. We've talked about it on hundreds of podcasts that we've done. I've done, and dozens of shows that Alex and I have done together, which is that Iran and Israel are pawns. Now I'm going to back this out. Okay. So Trump says, I don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Israel says Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. They have overlap in their incentive Venn diagram. They also have two very different final endpoints of their agendas. Israel and whoever they work for, and I would put Likud, the Netanyahu wing of the of Israeli leadership, maps very strongly to old Europe and City of London. There are factions in Iran, by the way, that no one wants to talk about that also map to old Europe and City of London, FYI. But they have an agenda. And that agenda is the same one that we're all fighting in every other space. If you believe my arguments about Davos, right, then understand that Israel is a part of that. Okay? So go back to Alex and I talking about how all roads lead to London. And I've always said, well, wherever the British Empire pulled back from, they always left X and anti-X. India, anti-India. Pakistan, North Korea, South Korea, Iran, in effect, Iran, Israel, or whatever, Shia, Sunni. There's a better, which is the big thing. Or Russia, Ukraine, or whatever. And now we're finding out United States, Canada. We had to finally put that on the table. So understand that these are conflicts that are there in order to be spun up and turned into conflicts, open, hot kinetic conflicts whenever there's a threat of peace. That has been a model that has been clear as day for 2 decades now. Every time India and China seem to get together and wanted and be peaceful, there's a flare up on the border. Whenever India and Pakistan are going to, come to some arrangement, maybe brokered by China, something happens in Kashmir. Like every freaking time. Well, when the BRICS added all of the countries in August of 2023 that surround the trade routes of the Arabian Peninsula, miraculously 8 weeks later or 6 weeks later, Hamas goes crazy and kills a bunch of Israelis. And they did. And I'm not going to entertain any freaking conspiracy theories here about any of this crap, about Netanyahu let it happen and blah, blah, blah. That's all nonsense. Like, they did it. Okay? And who was behind the Hamas attack? Was it Iran? Probably. Could have been. But I always argued at the time that the Palestinians, for example, Hamas and the Palestinians were always somebody's pawn, right? They're an asset. They can be used. And they were a rapidly depreciating asset given the situation. So use it or lose it, baby. Well, we have the same problem here with Iran and Israel. Davos is trying to is doing the full court press to destroy the United States. They want Trump neutralized. They want his presidency destroyed. And they have been telling everybody and all of their agents all over the world, Martin Armstrong's talked about this openly, that just wait out Trump. We've got him ring-fenced, and we'll get back on program for later. Now, do you think Netanyahu is not one of those actors? So you can see how Trump wants peace in the Middle East and a denuclearized Middle East, which is what he's been setting up previous to Thursday, that no one was arguing with me about, then why all of a sudden would he be the one to betray everybody? What if, and this is a very powerful argument when you start to really back everything out. I've been saying for years, going back well before you and I ever met, that the potential for a grand bargain in the Middle East is for all of this to end and the Russians and the Americans to leave. But no one wants that, right? Iran doesn't seem to want it. Israel doesn't seem to want it. Europe doesn't seem to want it. But the rest of the world wants it. All the people want it, but the governments don't seem to want it, right? So I'm doing a little bit of a Trumpian weave here. So there's a lot of little moving parts here, okay? Because you've got to understand all of those little things go into the final statement, which is, I thought this on Thursday night after I thought about it. I sat on a FaceTime call with Larry Johnson for 2 hours. He had just gotten back from Moscow. And Larry and I went over this, and Larry was very upset by all this because he really thought that, like everybody else, well, Trump holds Netanyahu's leash. Why didn't he just stop this? Well, that's a good question. So here's the question. So here's the answer. Or here's another question to try and understand what this answer would be. Why would Trump allow Netanyahu to do this? Well, here's the thing. We have factions in Iran that don't want a nuclear weapon. We have factions in Iran that are pursuing a nuclear weapon. All arguments to the contrary are nonsense. Khamenei has a fatwa saying, yeah, no nuclear weapons. That's nice. There are 4 factions in Iran that are vying for political power. You've got the theocracy, you've got the IRGC, you've got the civilian military, and you've got the civilian government. They all have different perspectives. Everybody wants to argue that the United States is a big monolith, and we know that that's not the case, right? We know that the United States isn't a political monolith. We know that there are sovereigntists. We know that there are neocons. We know that there are people in the pay of the Chinese. We know that there's all these factions, and they're all fighting amongst themselves. And Trump is trying to navigate a very, very tenuous, thin political situation in the legislature, and he's trying to remake the way we do everything in the United States in terms of handling money, tariffs, all that stuff. And it all comes down to the budget reconciliation bill, which is part of this calculus. So now, Why would Trump let Netanyahu off the leash? Well, he wants Iran's nuclear program destroyed. For whatever reason, and Trump gave a deadline. Why would he give a 60-day deadline? Knowing full well that 60-day deadline would run out 5 days before the G7, a couple of days before planned NATO exercises, which saw all those refuelers on their steaming, taking off and flying towards Europe. Guess what? They're all part of a big NATO exercise that was scheduled 2 years ago for this weekend. Why is all that there? I talk all the time about the Gantt chart at Evil Corp Central. This was all on the table. So, but here's the thing. You've got a faction in Iran that negotiates the same way Zelensky negotiates. Ever see it? You know how Zelensky negotiates? Yes, let's have peace talks. I reiterate, and then he reiterates the exact same unacceptable demands that he had 2 years ago. Who negotiates like that? I tweeted this out yesterday, and I added Yanis Varoufakis. Go talk to Greece. Who argues about who negotiates that way? Europe does. They set terms, and then they manipulate the game board to constantly make those terms the only option that you have available to you. As Varoufakis very, very famously said back in after the Greek debt crisis. So I walked in, I had all these charts, I had all these plans to get Greece out of their debt, and I got it. I went up to the Politburo and I presented it all, and then they went back and they ignored me as if I had just sung the Swedish national anthem. Don't you get that same feeling when you watch Zelensky talk, when you watch von der Leyen talk about these things, or Kaja Kallas, or Keir Starmer, or Donald Tusk, right? Same thing, over and over and over again. Same thing with Netanyahu. Iran is 2 weeks away from a nuclear weapon. We've been saying it for 30 years. It's an excuse, and we know it, but something has changed. Trump decided, I think, to blow this whole thing open and to finally get the faction within Iran that is pursuing a nuclear weapon. There is no reason to enrich uranium to 60% or more unless you're pursuing a weapon. And it's been my operating principle for years. And I've said this publicly 100 times on 1,000 podcasts, or on 100 podcasts. I've always operated under the principle that North Korea was working on the warhead and Iran was working on the delivery system. And notice how Russia is deeply involved in both militaries and both civilian governments to ensure that the warhead doesn't leave North Korea and the ballistic missiles, the ballistic missiles don't go to North Korea and the warheads don't go to Iran. So Russia's a guarantee has been an active nuclear non-proliferating agent in all this as well. It's very obvious that that Putin on his side has been trying to get Iran to the negotiating table. Trump gives Iran 60 days. I can hold Bibi off for 60 days. Davos is going to attack around this time because everything is going to happen at this time because of all of the things that are happening in the United States and around the world. And it's their timetable. It's not ours. So come to the table. Please make a fucking deal, for Christ's sake. Stop the extend and pretend. But the people who don't want peace in Iran, who want the nuclear weapon, I'm guaranteed are being told behind the scenes, just wait Trump out, just extend and pretend, don't worry about it, we've got this ring fence, nothing's going to happen, blah, 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 blah. If you look like you're negotiating, he'll keep negotiating. He gave him a 60-day warning, deadline, and on day 61, he took the leash off Netanyahu. Why? Because now the Israelis, who have been planning a big operation for years, executed. And they got a lot done. And they may have degraded Iran's ability to retaliate sincerely. But at the same time, they did hit Israel in response. And they did score sincere hits. They took out the port at Haifa. They took out the Mossad headquarters. Apparently they took out Dimona, the Israelis' nuclear facility. But they have no air defense. Why? Because they did combined arms operations and intelligence operations on the ground. So they got their thing done. And Trump's like, okay, go for it. that advances my agenda, which is to let these people know that the days of playing this game of extend and pretend, or as I like to put it, it's a terrier that won't submit. Like it's like a dog that won't submit. You put, I got a 12-pound rat terrier that fights with my 90-pound Maremma all the time over the female Maremma, because the 12-pound rat terrier thinks that, he's her girlfriend, that he's her boyfriend when he's her side piece. And then he gets into a fight with the 90-pound dog and refuses to give in. I have to pull the 90-pound dog off while he's showing unbelievable restraint. And the stupid 12-pound dog is like, because they're terriers and they don't know how to submit. I got news for you. The IRGC is a bunch of fucking terriers. Not terror. Well, they're also terrorists. And everybody's tired of their bullshit. Just like everybody's tired of Israel's bullshit. Trump is making deals around the entire Middle East to stabilize the region and bring commerce and start stitching the region together with commerce. I think he had the framework of a deal with the Iranians, who refused to cut it. And he had to show them, I'm sorry, you had a deadline. If you don't meet the deadline, I can't stop him. And I'm not going to, because you shouldn't have a nuclear weapon either. That's where we were on Thursday. Everything else since then has been exactly the same. Everybody is exhorting Iran to come to the table before they're wiped out. Okay? But at the same time, Netanyahu has 20% approval rating. He's going to get, this was all happening when the Knesset was about to fall and they had to, cobble things together. And he's like, give me another, 60 days. And then he's going to or whatever it is. And then he's going to walk into the sunset like Churchill did after starting the war. Or at least that's what he thinks. Notice he's in Greece, by the way, because he didn't want to be there for the bombs. He didn't want to get killed. So I'm watching Trump, and it's very obvious he is leaving open that this is the kind. It's like at the end of the day, it's like, I hate to use a Star Wars reference, but it's like, we engaged in aggressive negotiations. Well, aggressive negotiations with a lightsaber. Right? Like, it's, this is how you get people who don't respect you to get to respect you. At some point, you got to punch them in the mouth. There ain't no way out of this. And and it's terrible and it's awful. Nobody wants this, but you made your bed. The Israelis made their bed. The Iranians have made their bed. The IRGC's axis of resistance is horrific. Like, no one should be cheering for freaking Hezbollah or the Houthis or anyone else any more than you should be cheering the friggin' IDF going in and wiping out the Palestinians in Gaza. If at some point it's all the same shit. But there's nothing you can do. You're not going to stop this. And you're not going to stop it until the people who are fomenting it, who benefit from this, because everybody, you should be asking yourself the question, who benefits from this? And I have a through line back to the very people who set this thing up in the first place. And nothing's changed. And we have too many commentators in the space who are proving themselves to not be strategic thinkers. And I don't know that it's a dangerous game. I'm not arguing that. I'm not arguing that the threat of this thing spiraling out of control isn't real. But clearly, this is what we're dealing with. Come to the table, negotiate a peace plan. So what have we really seen the Israelis do to Iran? Knock out the IRGC's leadership again. Notice that they made a big stink about killing all the negotiators. There's a tell for you. Like, yeah, we don't want peace. Like, okay. And then we get to find out, who's the paper tiger and who isn't. And the reality is that they're both paper tigers. Trump has not committed one U.S. soldier to the operation. Whether there are our guys on the ground or not acting rogue, well, that's fine. Like, whatever. Like, we know that. They're working in Ukraine, too. Like, we know this. But the broader plan is, if he can do this is, I think, what we're dealing with. So I'm going to, back everything off for a second and remind everybody what I actually think is the best outcome here. Because all of this doesn't matter until you get to the best outcome. What's the goal? Well, as I've said a couple of times now, it's like me watching the Philadelphia Flyers and the Dallas Stars play a hockey game. What do you hope for? A tie and a lot of injuries. Okay, I'll put it in football terms for the Americans in the audience. Ready? I used to be a New York Giants fan. You know, when Dallas and Philadelphia were playing, tie and a lot of injuries, which is much more consequential in football than it ever was in hockey. Right? That's what you hope for. You hope both. What you're looking for is the destruction of both factions within Iran and Israel that want the conflict. And no more nukes. How do you get... And the United States no longer with a military guarantee for Israel, and the Russians get to walk away from Iran. So, are we closer to that framework today than we were on Thursday? Yes, we are. It's bloody, because here's the thing: you take out Iran's nuclear program, all of a sudden Israel no longer has a casus belli to act like a bunch of jackasses running around the world with impunity. They've now been turned into a pariah state because they're the aggressors. And no one likes them now after what they've done in Gaza. Like, it's the worst PR campaign ever. Like, so Netanyahu's party's not going to survive this. Naftali Bennett's out there doing the entire U.S. podcast circuit right now. Oh, by the way, getting prepared that he's the one who's going to take over afterwards. Now, I don't have a great read on Bennett, but he's far more pro-American than he is pro-Israel. He's not part of that same thing that we've been dealing with, that whole, Miriam Adelson, Mark Levin. Like, I've been watching this going, oh, look, Trump gave Israel everything they've ever wanted, because the Zionists everything they ever wanted. And they're going to get it good and hard on the backside of this. But at the same time, Iran's axis of resistance is bullshit too. And I don't care about going back to Mossadegh and the Shah and this, that, and everything else. Dude, this is where we are in 2025. What happened 80 years ago has its roots, but it doesn't bear on the exact situation today. Because the world is different. We now have a non-communist Russia wanting to work with the United States to craft peace across this entire slice of the planet. And that's pretty obvious. And even if that's not the case, if all that has happened here is that Putin went, yep, do that, but I get free reign in Ukraine. Stay out from here, and we're going to wrap this thing up in Ukraine. And then go look at what's happening on the ground in Ukraine. And all of a sudden, the Russians have figured out how to do maneuver warfare. Wow. Think they were sandbagging people for 3 years, like I told you? Yeah, kind of looks that way. All right, moving down from Sumy, they're breaking into the Dnipropetrovsk, blowing out the line. It's not hard to do maneuver warfare against a highly degraded enemy like the Ukrainian army. And notice who's screaming about this. It's the Europeans. So Trump goes to the G7 yesterday, dresses Mark Carney down. The first words when he makes his statement, the first thing he does is do what? Say, why did you guys cut Russia out of the G8? Justin Trudeau and Obama convinced everybody to kick Putin out of the Russians out of the G8. Now it's the G7. If it would still be the G8, we wouldn't have a war in Ukraine right now. If it was the G8 the last time I was president, the typical Trump thing. But he's right, because we would have been able to talk to them, figure this stuff out. But notice how Europe never wants to talk to Russia. Notice how the Israelis don't want to talk to Iran. See the pattern? Like, this ain't 4D chess, folks. This is reading the players at the board. 4D chess is the new conspiracy theory. It's the new psyop to destroy the language around people actually like figuring out what these fucking people are doing. Like, everybody's let their frustration and their anger at Israel boil over into the ionosphere now. It's retarded. I don't like Israel. I can't stand them. I want them brought low, and I want them. But how are you going to get out of this? And how are you going to craft this in such a way that we can walk away durably? This has been the question that everybody's asked me for 7 years whenever I get into this conversation. And here we are. Maybe it looks like this. Maybe this was the only option, which is to, at the end of the day, and this is the final point, and I'll turn the microphone over. In order to dare peace, you have to threaten war when you're dealing with people like this. That's where we are.
Did you listen to Colonel Douglas McGregor, his thoughts on it?
Yeah. And I think Doug's an old boomer who's been passed bad information and doesn't know how to I'm sorry. I'm done with McGregor. I mean, I love Larry Johnson. He's a friend of mine, but I was like on the phone with him the other night. And I'm like, Larry, you're missing the bigger context here. Doug McGregor, Tucker Carlson, they're all missing it. And I don't know why they're missing it. Look, I had a friend of mine when Erdogan moved into Syria, and I had my initial take was really confused, right? I was like, I had no idea what to make of what happened in Syria. I had a friend of mine who I'd been, chatting with back and forth for a long time about this, and he's Muslim and whatnot, and he speaks English. He's in, he lives in America. He's like, don't you see what's happening here? Turkey's now, this was allowed to happen. Turkey was brought in to stabilize the region. Netanyahu's angry about it because he was expecting to get Damascus. Like, everybody got it wrong. In the end, he and I were right. He was confused about what was happening the other night. And I told him it's the same story all over again. You wait. I'm half tempted to believe. Dexter White and I were chatting about this last night. And he's like, dude, I can see within 48 hours the Russians whisking Khamenei off to Moscow in order to preserve his life. Because it's done. It's over. Like, neither government that created this mess or neither governmental structure that created this mess can be allowed to survive. MBS's statement the other day, Israel is trying to get the United States into an open conflict with Iran. Trump goes to the G7 after saying this about Russia, which was the most discordant fucking thing you could possibly say. And then leaves early, and Reuters let it slip this morning. Joaquin Flores found it on Reuters, that they published on Reuters the statement, and Trump left early and refused to sign it about the Israel-Iran conflict. And if you read the statement, oh, by the way, you can't find that article in that form anymore. Reuters has rewritten it, removed the old headline. It's gone. I went looking for it this morning. If anybody can find a version of it, I'd love this. The version that Joaquin found, I'd love to see it. Because the truth is that statement was meant to preclude, if Trump signed it, he would be in effect now on the hook for, no, we can't negotiate anymore. He walked away from it and went home. Called the National Security Council together. Didn't sign the statement. Why? Leaving open the door for negotiation. You punch him in the mouth and you're like, okay, now what?
Tom, do you know what the statement said? Sorry, maybe you referenced it and I just missed it.
It was we believe that Israel has a right to defend itself, and Iran is and Iran can't pursue a nuclear weapon, and blah blah blah, all this boilerplate stuff. And in the end, sad day, but the Iranian regime has to be taken out. So Israel's doing what they need to do to preserve peace. Huh, really? From the G7. What a shock. The very people who manipulated events to this point in the fucking first place. Pox on all their fucking houses. Like, I'm sorry, Shaun. I know this is discordant. I know this is discordant. I know it is. And I woke up this morning and I'm looking at the situation as it stands right now, and I'm like, this may be the most important podcast I ever record. You've got to understand the nuance of this. The Russians and the Americans both want this. This is the way out of this mess. This is chaos is the strategy. Permanent open festering wounds that can be poked with a stick is the strategy. It's the way of the world, man. And it's the same people who have been doing it for years, centuries, are doing it to us again. And they're trying to force Donald Trump into doing something he knows he doesn't want to do or need to do. And I think Trump is holding the line. He may not bear up to the pressure. Like, I'm not saying this is a winning strategy, okay, on his part or anybody else's part. I just think that this is where we are. And I think that in the end of the day, because remember, here's another thing that everybody missed. Everybody missed it. Because Netanyahu was so goddamn nauseating. Who the hell wants to listen to him bloviate again, right? Like, I never want to listen to that man speak. Yet, his statement on Thursday night contained words that he never used. He said, this is not directed at the Iranian people. It's time. We want you to become part of the world, of the global community. You can be a great people again. We can do this. Now, you can read that as standard boilerplate, neocon. Let's rise up against the bad guy, the evil mullahs, and liberate you. That's the same bullshit that John Bolton and all of them have been, saying for years. But coming out of Netanyahu's mouth with Trump as president, it hits differently this way. It's a signal that more likely than not, Trump is in charge of this, and Trump let Netanyahu do this. But everybody wants to go out there today and confirm their bias that the United States is a wholly captured subsidiary of the evil Zionist empire, as opposed to understanding that there are factions within this evil Zionist empire, right? So here's a part of the timeline that we all missed. I didn't. My community didn't. No one's talking about it. Lindsey Graham was holding up the big, beautiful bill, the budget reconciliation bill, in committee over border security and ICE funding, all of it. He had control over it, and he used it to get Trump he used it, and he held it up in committee. The minute Trump allowed Netanyahu to attack, he passed it out of committee. It's on its way out of the Senate. Trump has to navigate political realities in the United States that are real. If he can do that, make everybody happy, get what he needs, and not commit one U.S. troop to the fight, you're not going to tell me that's not a win? My friend who looked at me and said, what's happening in Syria is exactly what needs to happen, kept reminding me, and he was right. The Iranians are very good at propaganda. By the way, the Russians are and then I'm like, yeah, and so are the Russians, and so are the Israelis, and so are the Americans, and so are the British, and so are the French, and so are the Italians, and everybody else. And everybody wants to believe that Iran is the victim and the good guy, and Israel is the bad guy. And Israel has played that role of villain beautifully since 10/7. Haven't they? But the truth is that Iran has a terror. They really do have a terror network around the world. And you can choose to take the typical American line of I want to root for the underdog, even though the underdog is just as bad. I'm like, at the end of the day, dude, there are no good guys here. This isn't the Lord of the fucking Rings. And even in the end, Frodo failed, right? Because the ring got to him. And he had to be saved by Gollum. Not that that metaphor really bears here. My point is that there are no good guys and bad guys here. There are only bad guys and shades of gray. It's a big shit sandwich. Everybody has to take a bite. And on the other side of this, think of the long-term goal. And the long-term goal is an Israel without an Iran to have as their existential threat, and an Iran not pursuing a nuclear weapon, which destabilizes the entire fucking world. And a United States that then no longer needs to be in the Middle East, and a Russia that no longer needs to worry about attacks through its southern flank, through the Caspian. And they get their international north-south transport corridor. That's what the Russians are playing for. Why would they allow regime change in Iran? Because the faction that's pursuing nuclear weapons in Iran is keeping the international north-south transport corridor, which is a strategic priority of the Russians. Why? I'll get to that in a second. They want that. That's a multimodal transport corridor from St. Petersburg to the port of Chabahar on the Indian Ocean. And how are you going to get that if Iran is constantly involved in all of this conflict? For the Chinese, they want their overland route from China to Iran, Belt and Road, to go smoothly. Who's opposed to both of those things? Europe. Why does Russia want the international north-south transport corridor? Because it alleviates the bottleneck of the Black Sea, which they don't control. Everybody's plans to keep the Asian continent in strife and conflict, those are strategic. They represent strategic issues, strategic challenges to that worldview. The Chinese want an overland route because they no longer want to be bottled up behind the Straits of Malacca, which the United States controls effectively. That's the reality. So let's build an overland route. Let's build a gas pipeline from Kunming to the coast of Myanmar, because it's north of the Straits of Malacca, and then you build a port there, and then. And we've been this is the oldest game in the world, man.
I don't know if I'm going to say this right.
Okay.
And nobody can see my paper, what I'm drawing. But I drew a straight line for no conflict. And what no conflict does is brings you wealth through trade, essentially. It allows countries to have, their access to, lack of a better term, world markets, Tom. Would that be just safe to say?
They have access to, they have the ability to find customers and producers, get together and do trade, and trade stitches the world together, and trade brings the overall level of stress and conflict in the world down.
If you go back,
if it's mutually beneficial, everybody's getting wealthy. If
you go back to Armstrong, Armstrong always says you wouldn't attack a neighbor of yours if you have a whole bunch of trade with them, right? I mean, it would be counterproductive.
I would also add to that things like pipelines are the stitching, are the seams that stitch the world together. Pipelines, trade routes, that kind of thing.
On the opposite side, the competing idea would be conflict. That's how you keep people in check. Or, as you're pointing out, you put in these different areas. You mentioned a whole bunch of them: Russia, Ukraine, Palestine versus
Israel, and Iran,
Pakistan, India. You got all these things. So anytime they need to put things back in place, they poke the button, and all of a sudden this stirs up. And through those conflicts, you get wealth. You get wealth through conflict. because
You get
there's a
wealth through
different.
conflict by protecting your existing industry, or by building a war machine, or by selling weapons to both sides, or whatever. Right.
And maybe I'm oversimplifying this, but on the no conflict, what you're pointing to is Russia / Putin, essentially, and on the U.S., Trump
Mhm.
want the straight wealth through trade. Let's go back to not killing people, because one of the things that I think Trump ran on, or at least this is what I believed in, what he was going to do was end conflict. He wanted to. He was signaling, let's stop all these wars.
Right.
Right, day one, I'm gonna end the war in Russia, Ukraine. Now everybody took him literally, like if he doesn't do it in 24 hours, he's a failure. And I would argue it's more of a signal. You got to listen to the way Trump talks. It's a signal of where he wants to go. On the flip side, you have conflict, and who's above that? Well, Davos for sure, old Europe, London, and Ian Burlingame would say the Dutch, right? The
Right. And
and
then and don't get and don't ever forget that there are factions in
in all
Russia
of these,
that wanted, and China
100%.
has, the United States, like there are
That's why I put
evil people
Putin.
are everywhere. Yes.
Right, yeah, that's why I put Putin alongside Russia, because it isn't just all of Russia that wants. Certainly, there's a competing faction in that. Certainly, there's a competing faction in the U.S. I mean, they've been literally going to Ukraine
Yeah.
and stirring it up. There's been people all over this,
Yep.
and you're going, will there ever be a winner? Well, I don't know how you gauge that, because I mean, as long as the world has been here, there has been conflict. And
Yep.
there has been times, extended times, I might add, of peace where trade and wealth was generated through allowing business to prosper, allowing people to prosper. And we're seeing those two things at odds right now in the Middle East, I think is what you're pointing to, if I oversimplify it.
No, you didn't you did. I mean, in some ways, Sean, you kind of have to oversimplify it, right? In order to, like, it's a perfectly reasonable framework to then begin the um the process of putting meat on those bones, which you just outlined as the skeleton. Now, my job is to put all the meat on the bones. I presented the meat up front. You're presenting the skeleton.
Well, it's funny because when I listen to it, I'm like, like one of the things I have a really hard time understanding is Middle East. I've never been.
Right.
I've never like just sat there and soaked myself in all these different regions and trying to understand. Now I've listened to you and Alex and others, I might add, talk about it, and at nauseum almost, right? Okay, nobody wants war, but it's kind of like, yet you got these competing factions, one pushing for one idea, another pushing for another, and people caught right in the middle of it. This is going back to your first comment on the first podcast I ever did with you, I believe, where you talked about the giants. Well, the giants could be the factions too. It doesn't just have to be single entities, Russia, China, US, on and on. It could be the competing factions going to war and the people caught in the middle of that as well.
Yes. And then it becomes easy to demonize a people by creating, remember, language creates, why do you think I created the term Davos? These people needed you needed to turn their tactics against them. They created the term the mullahs in order to demonize Iran. Isolationists to destroy, conservatives and America Firsters and America First too. Like, I'm like, no, fuck you, Davos. We need to personalize this. You need to give them a name. You need to create an image system around them. Right? You got to use their tactics if you want to, because dude, this is propaganda, and the propaganda right now is hit hot and heavy. And some propaganda is a force for the positive, and some propaganda is a voice for a voice for evil. Like, you use the terms at your disposal in order to advance your agenda. My agenda is, let's get rid of all these fucking people. Like, it's not that, nothing's changed. And I know that there are people in the audience who think I'm just making excuses for Trump because I don't want to be wrong. That's nice. That's the fucking psych profile on me over at GCHQ. It's really fucking obvious at this point. Like, and I'm okay with that. You need to realize that that's what's happening. Trump's support is being sliced and diced. Okay? This is the ultimate break point. Okay? Right? It started almost immediately. It was easy. It was easy to undermine the faith of any libertarians that were in his orbit around the election. Why? Those are people who are defined by their oppositional defiance disorder. They want to be skeptics and critics because that's their raison d'etre. That's their modus operandi, whatever you want to call it. That's the way they operate. So they're easy people to cleave off. All you got to do is, go, so, where are the Epstein files? Or where's this? Or where's that? Or, why are there no arrests? Or why, what are you doing here? You promised us, $1 trillion with the cuts and we got, 200 billion or whatever. Like, you see what I mean? Like, they're easy because they are already pre-programmed and pre-primed to be skeptical and to say, see, nothing ever changes because they want to be right, because their worldview needs to be confirmed. And that's where we are today. Like Konstantin Kisin, who's a guy I don't normally follow, had a really great tweet the other day in response to the whole Tucker Carlson dust up. Tucker Carlson going off on Trump when he was on Steve Bannon. And I don't trust Steve Bannon as far as I can fucking throw him, that guy. And he said there's a lot of people who were fake anti-war, or, have this fake, they got on the Trump train, or fake MAGA or whatever. They got on this train because it was good for their business, because they believed in the maximal position on this, and they were never really in it for the outcome and for the actual fight. And they've turned out to be fair weather friends and whatnot. Ian Burlingame literally tweeted out the other day about Elon Musk. He said, this is a loyalty test. Elon's going to break. Elon broke. And then we have to find out, who's following Elon, and who's loyal to Trump. And Elon, after, going off the friggin' rails, I'm sorry. Okay, you're sorry. Come on back. Let's do some work. We live in a world, especially in social media, where there's no forgiveness. You have to be completely 100% consistent all the fucking time. Oh, and by the way, in my case, I have to be 100% right about everything with fungible data in order to not, get criticism. I don't give a shit. People criticize me. I don't care about that. I point it out as a means by which to cleave support and to gaslight you. It's about, this is the whole thing, this whole fucking thing about Trump is bowing down to Netanyahu and the Israelis is gaslighting. Nothing has changed. Trump literally said, I will do everything imaginable to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. And and if you say that as the president of the fucking United States and you're supporting him, you got to believe that he's willing to commit military assets to get that done. If you don't, Iran doesn't take it fucking seriously. This is statecraft. This is where it is. And if you're not willing to at least accept the possibility of that, then I'm sorry, I don't know what the hell to fucking tell you. He told you he was going to do this. Now, how he gets there, and if he can do it without committing any troops, that's an amazing outcome. That's knock down the other 4 guys on Mount Rushmore and put Trump's fucking mug up there. That's an amazing fucking outcome. And yet everybody's so fucking gaslit over hating Israel that they can't see the forest for the fucking trees. Unbelievable. They want to believe simultaneously that the Jews are all powerful and the perpetual victim. Look, no. I had an insight this morning. I was thinking about this over my morning coffee while I was prepping my comments for Newsmax that I have to do every Tuesday morning. And I thought about it. I'm like, oh, I know what happened here for a lot of people. I know I probably already lost all the people that I'm talking about here, but if you're still listening, I used to be one of these people. So disappointed with my country for what it's done that I then reflexively take the side of the people who we have victimized, right? So in this case, there's been this undercurrent for a long, long time that Israel runs the United States. AIPAC controls Congress and blah, 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 which is, I'm not downplaying that. Of course, they have a massive amount of influence. I'm not ignoring the trees outside my office. Yeah, it's right there. I see it. That's not what I'm saying. But they've taken their frustration over 70 years after post-World War II of the Jews being the perfect victim because of the Holocaust, where we weren't allowed at all to criticize Israel or anything, or anything they've done. And where Israel kept taking from us and putting us in bad situations, which we had to bail them out of. That frustration is real, and it's laudable, and it's powerful because it built up over multiple generations. And then October 7th happens, Israel goes crazy. The algorithms all of a sudden allow everybody to start complaining about the Jews. And they went from Israel's not the perfect victim to Israel is now the all-powerful puppet master. They swung from one side of the fence because in their frustration, they never believed that. Once they disbelieved that, they went to the exact opposite extreme. And you have this insanity, and it's gaslighting. By the way, you were encouraged to believe that the entire time. You were encouraged to swing that far to the quote unquote right as opposed to the left. You were encouraged for that. Why? Because what's the modus operandi that I've talked about over and over and over again with these fucking people is that they set everybody in motion and in conflict with one another, and then they scapegoat one side. After October 7th, the reason you were allowed to all of a sudden complain about the Jews is because they were setting them up to become the scapegoat for everything wrong with the world. And whatever outcome happens. That was what was coming. I said it on your podcast. I said it on everybody's podcast. I've said for years, going back to when I was doing fucking periscopes with my hat on, talking into my goddamn phone. And I said, if Netanyahu's not careful, he's going to turn the Jews into the perfect scapegoat for all the world's ills. We saw it coming ages ago. Like me and the 40 people who were like watching me on fucking Periscope at the time. I'm like, we've been saying it consistently for years. I used to talk about it with my friend Halsey English on when he had his regular show. And Halsey's an Israeli journalist, former Israeli journalist who, can't stand Israel. Understands the problem, understands a lot of the stuff better than even I do. I don't always agree with him. He's one of my sounding boards on this shit. He's a brilliant guy. And he's like, yeah, this is what's going on. And we don't, and as a Jew, he doesn't want it. He doesn't want that, but he can see it. And like most, rational Jews don't want this. But it's happening. Just like I've tried to explain to the end the Fed crowd. You always see the Fed as the villain. But in any narrative matrix is hero, victim, and villain. And it's a triangle. Right? And depending on the frame of the conflict will determine where you are in that one of those three vertices of the triangle. From one perspective, yeah, from the dollar purchasing power perspective, the Fed's the villain. No argument. But that was at one point. Now, what happens when the nature of the game changes and when the Fed is now under attack? Why was the Fed the villain? That's my argument. It's been my argument for years. What if the Fed's is being attacked? Here's this triangle. Hero, victim, villain. This triangle, they're the victim. Under what circumstances can you think of the Fed as the victim? And then go one step further and say, okay, under what circumstances can you see the Fed being the hero? My argument has always been that for its own reasons for survival and for the people it represents, the Fed, depending on what framework you're talking about, can be all three of those things simultaneously. It all depends on your framework, your point of view. Libertarians want to stay in the smallest little triangle because that's where it's comfortable and it's easy and they can be right. And they miss the bigger picture. Same thing with Israel. Israel can be simultaneously hero, victim, and villain. So right now, they get to be the hero and knock out the friggin' IRGC. But they're also the villain for everything else they've done. And they can be the victim of Davos's manipulations. And you can hold all three of those things, versions of Israel, in your head simultaneously, and they all have validity. But that's nuance. That's not a 5-year-old's view of the fucking world, which is what social media degrades everybody down to. And what absolutist thinking gets us down to. I'm at the point now where I'm like, as a libertarian, I am so angry with current libertarians that I look at them and I go, you're indistinguishable from Marxists. The only difference is you read better books. But you purity spiral in exactly the same way. Talk to Ian McGilchrist about the purity spiral, about the left brain dominance and all that stuff. It's all right there. And you're just watching it happen in real fucking time, Shaun. Over World War III. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not playing that fucking game anymore. So let's grow up. Let's all level up in our analysis and our commentary and our ability to read the game board. Why? What's the goal? The goal is peace. For whatever version of peace we can get, for whatever small value of that we can get. We currently don't have it at all. Who's doing it? Why? What's their motive, means, and opportunity? Like, start asking, do I have to put on the friggin' soiled old trench coat and start, start talking like Peter Falk? Like, I can do it. Just one more thing, man. Just one more thing. You know what I mean? That's the way I see the world, Shaun.
I want to bring it to Trump for a second.
Sure.
Because we've seen over the course of, I'm chuckling on this side, folks. Tom's been going off and he hasn't got to smoke his cigar. You keep lighting it. He has it out with Musk. Okay. And me and the brothers were sitting here while it was going down. It was right before, if you go back and listen to, we never talk politics on the Brothers Roundtables. We always talk the NHL playoffs. They come on for roughly 2 months, and we go once a week. And to all the people waiting for a Brothers Roundtable, I apologize. We've had a couple things on the family side that have taken up some time, and that, no worries. Everything's good. Just that we haven't been able to do one last week. Anyways, the one we did last, this is going on, and we're sitting there. We're watching this, and we start talking about it. Like, what the hell is going on? Like, Trump and Musk are going at it. And then I had Ian Burlingame on. And he talked about loyalty tests. And I sat back and I thought about that. I'm like, oh, man, that's a really... And now Tucker. And so you can either look at that. Well, I think there's two trains of thought. And maybe you have a third. But the two trains of thought is either Trump is compromised and is not living up to what he's supposed to do. So Musk comes down on him. Then Tucker goes at him. And you have that train of thought. Or the other is the loyalty test theory, where Trump is having some issues internally. And so he does loyalty tests to see who's actually with him. Now, am I, once again, not making that too simple, but I could be losing a train of thought that I haven't thought of.
No, that's fair. I think that's, it's funny. I mean, that's part of it. That's a good question, Shaun. I think there probably is at least 2 or 3 other avenues on this as well. Trump's under a lot of pressure. He's being attacked from all angles. This is all happening, against the backdrop of the LA riots and the No King riots and all this stuff. Like, this is all happening at the same time. They're activating the domestic color. We haven't even talked about the domestic color revolution, which is effectively the kicking. They're trying to kick off a U.S. Civil War. We haven't even talked about that. We haven't talked about, I've only just briefly talked about, the way Ukraine is, getting crushed right now by the Russians, which we all knew was going to happen at this point, right? But again, and the way the whole Musk Trump thing, there was a guy on Twitter did a great, I'm sorry, Elon, I can't call it X. Sorry, I'm dead naming it. I don't give a fuck. The guy on Twitter said, he used the whole Myers-Briggs IP on trees matrix, INTJ, ESN, that thing. A former friend of mine called it IP on trees, which is hilarious. And he said, Trump is one thing, Musk is the exact opposite, and that's that. And embedded in that post, it was a note about loyalty, like that. Elon, being a Spurg and a linear thinker, sees this is the way things are supposed to progress, and if you deviate from that, then you're betraying whatever it was that you were supposed to be doing. This type of thinking is very endemic in libertarian circles, because it really does attract that kind of person. And then there's Trump, who's kind of all over the place and is a nonlinear thinker and a nonlinear actor, and doesn't and demands loyalty without explaining himself. He does. Trump demands loyalty. He doesn't necessarily explain why. I think it's a defect, personally, but it is who he is. I think this is part of the problem. Trump will do things. He will lie as the strategic action. He does it all the time. This morning it was really funny. Right before we got on, I uploaded my weekly podcast for Newsmax, and my editor, Mike, came back, and I always do a little thing with 3 talking points and a meme, and I had a picture of Trump, and the caption was blah blah blah, and he's like, "Did you mean that to be the caption, or did you just leave a placeholder in by mistake?" I'm like, "Oh no, that's exactly what I meant." Because for my Newsmax podcast, my 3 talking points are liars, guns, and money. So liars, is Trump one? Blah 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 blah. He lies as a strategic thing. The Democrats can't stand it. The media can't stand it. Bill Maher can't stand it. They can't stand it because most people can't stand it. But it's a negotiating tactic. It's a way he operates. And anybody who takes Donald Trump's words at face value is an idiot. How many times are you going to be burned by Donald Trump saying one thing and then doing something completely opposite? But the goal is to move the ball, is to think about, why did he say that? What reaction was he trying to get? And what was his ultimate goal? And did he reach his ultimate goal? That's what he's doing right now with Iran and Israel. He made it abundantly clear. He's had the DOD, he's had himself, the State Department, everybody blaring one after the other, saying, we are not directly involved in this. This is Israel. Yes, we gave them the tools to do it, but this is Israel's operation. They are, and anybody else who's helping them, it's not us. So anytime you see, for example, a German refueling plane turn its transponder on for 5 minutes and then turn it off again, I wonder why that happened. Maybe because there's a German pilot who wanted to let everybody know that the Germans are helping the Israelis, because he doesn't want to be involved in this either. Did anybody notice that the British did everybody forget that the British have a friggin' air base in Cyprus, and they're helping Israel refuel, reload the planes and everything else? But we're not seeing that. No, what does everybody focus on? The American refuelers flying towards Europe, and the USS Carl Vinson showing up in, moving, which is due to be decommissioned, this last thing, showing up in theater. Now, an old aircraft carrier like that, everybody immediately jumps to, that's where the false flag is going to be. The Israelis are going to blow that up, and they're going to blame it on Iran, and then we're going to begin a war, and maybe, or it could be a hospital ship, because aircraft carriers make excellent hospital ships, by the way, because war's coming, and we may only be involved in that part of it. Or it's a hospital ship because we might get involved in this, because Iran might do something fucking stupid and attack some of our guys. What I've seen from all the world leaders around this, Putin, MBS, blah, 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 Trump, what I keep seeing is nothing but urging Iran, don't take the bait. Don't blame the Americans. If you hold your water, fight the Israelis as best you can, and hold your water, all will be revealed. The best way to win a war like this, and this is a propaganda war as much as it is anything else, is to allow the real villains to expose themselves. Iran's best chance for survival right now is to continue to play the victim card. Attack only Israel, who attacked them, and let the propaganda flow that they're the victims. That's their best way out of this. It's also the surest path to long-term solving the entire fucking nightmare. And who loses in that scenario? Europe. Because they will lose their permanent aircraft carrier in the Middle East. And the United States will be able to walk away with their hands mostly clean, not clean, mostly clean. And we'll expose all the APAC motherfuckers in Congress. Like I said about the budget bill, notice what Trump did. He allowed Israel to attack. Lindsey Graham lets the bill out of before Lindsey Graham lets the bill out of committee. Trump is like, breathing fucking brimstone and fire. Then the bill passed. Then the bill comes out of committee. Trump's like, come back to the negotiating table. Putin says, come back to the negotiating table. MBS comes out and says, come back to the negotiating table. That was a win for Trump in the United States. I mean, it sucks that it's over a war, but this is, again, if you want peace, you might have to dare war. And the people who want war, eventually you're going to have to give it to them because you're not going to stop them because they're not going to submit. Until
I was chuckling to go back to the German refueling plane transponder. I read it, accidentally got put on. I'm like,
of course.
How the hell do you even write that? Accidentally got put on? Are we serious right now?
Well, if you're a British propagandist or a Dutch propagandist,
right?
You do.
Oh, accidentally? No, there's no accident.
We just accidentally let COVID out of a lab in Wuhan. Oopsie.
Right.
But you had the entire infrastructure for social distancing and masks and all the other stuff. You had all those supply chains just spun right up. I was talking with Dave Bradley yesterday for my podcast. I haven't had a chance to review it and publish it yet. And Dave brought up that where Davos went wrong was with the paper straw thing, where they published the stupid picture of the turtle with the straw up his nose, and then within a week everybody was using paper straws. Like, that is not something that just happens, folks. No, there is no just-in-time supply chain for paper straws at that moment in time. No, they prepped that motherfucker for years, and then when they got there, they distributed. And everybody on point.
The other thing I just wanted to bring up on the Musk Trump thing.
Sure.
When Musk was working with Trump,
mm-hmm.
there was a faction of people that pointed to Elon Musk being, I don't know how better to put it, Antichrist. Like, just like the most evil of evil. He somehow
mm-hmm.
snuck in there. Musk needs to be rooted out, rooted out, rooted out. Then they have it out. And I'm not saying those same people, but certainly you could see the faction spin up now that Donald Trump is the Antichrist. And once again, I'm probably using the wrong term. You just get the point. When they're together, Elon Musk is, oh my God, we can't look at all the awful that's coming out of this, and look at where he's leading us. Look at all the people tied in there. As soon as they fracture, it goes to Donald Trump. And now I always defer to you and others when you come on and you talk about these things, because I'm just, the curator.
Dude, that's a great observation.
Don't
it's a great observation, Shaun. Don't downplay it. Don't downplay your insight. You're learning. You're getting better. Like, dude, you're leveling up. This is what I'm asking for. That's brilliant. It's awesome. Excellent job. Even if you're not wholly right. What I mean is, I don't know that you're not wholly right. Don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is, even if you wind up not being wholly correct about it, the way you're thinking about these things now is on the correct path. You can be wrong in an instance. You can take a heuristic and use it, and it may fail you in that moment, or may only 75% describe the situation. Maybe there's another angle to it that we haven't thought of yet. Fine, okay, whatever. But you got 75% of the way down the road. Everybody else is stuck in first gear, and you're in third. Yeah, you want to be in fifth, but you're getting there. I mean, I'm not saying you're not in fifth gear on that particular observation. I'm saying you might only be in third gear. I don't know, because we're all dealing with fungible information. We're all dealing with incomplete information. We're all dealing with mis and disinformation being seeded into our fucking brains and gaslighting us on a regular basis. I get it. I'm not saying I'm immune to it. I'm saying none of us are immune to it. So whatever you think you know, and I'm telling you, if what I said so far in this podcast is discordant to you, sounds like 54D chess or this or that or anything else, you're proving my point that I made on Thursday night of last week. In 48 hours, the world we thought we knew will be unrecognizable. It is unrecognizable to you, so you're falling back on old tropes.
Yeah, well, and if you're watching, the question is, like, why, right? Like, so when Musk Trump thing happens, now Tucker, you go, why? Like, what's going on? Like, what is actually going on? Not what are they feeding us?
Right.
Like, oh, everybody's having fallout. Trump is weak, right? That's kind of what they're trying to position. Like, really?
A friend of mine last night, or maybe have been first thing this morning, I didn't even respond to it. But he said, it turns out that Elon Musk isn't a genius. He's just a drug addict. And I went, I don't know if it's correct or not, but I'm like, it's a perspective. I mean, Elon went off the rails and did something dumb, or he got his panties in a snit, and then because he's a spurg, he went this direction, and then he lost his shit, and then he was like, "Oh,
look at Musk."
And then he walks back.
I keep looking at what Armstrong. One of the coolest surreal experiences I've had to date, folks, was I got to drive Martin Armstrong around. Right, so I got to sit there and ask him a ton off the record on just lots of different stories. Nothing crazy. At least don't go to like crazy thoughts of where he's been and crazy conversation. It was more like how Armstrong got to where he's thinking about things.
Right.
And one of the things that I wrote down, like almost immediately when we pulled up for supper, I pulled out and I put it in my phone, is don't judge people by the way you think. Judge them by the way they think. So when you look at Elon Musk,
yes,
and I could be wrong on this, so correct me if I'm wrong, Tom. Man's been married multiple times. He's had kids with multiple women. He's had probably affairs. He's had a kid become something they're not. Have a transgender surgery. I don't know how to put that politically correct. I don't even know if there is a way. And I'm like, so he has been caught in the psyop that has been the last however many years. Yeah. And then people champion him as being like having everything right. You're like, no, he's a really brilliant guy. Nobody can take that away from him. But look at his path and look at how he thinks. Obviously, there's some things he is getting very wrong.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
There's been some things he's gotten very right.
I know people. I was talking to a friend of mine this weekend whose son used to work at Tesla. And he's like, eventually, and a lot of the people who were above him at Tesla left because they couldn't handle Elon's, chaos. And just look at the way Tesla was being run and still is being run in many ways. And you're like, it's crazy. And he's crazy. Sometimes he pulls it off. Like the line between genius and madness is very, very, very thin.
Very thin.
Very thin. And it goes back and and they have geniuses have lucid days and bad days. I've been accused of being a genius. I don't think I am. I think I'm just a, kind of above average guy with a chip on his shoulder. Right. But but I have moments of that. So I tend in that moment and I'm like, oh shit, did I just fucking lose my mind? We all have those days. Okay. And the higher up you go the IQ route, the more likely it is that you're going to misperceive reality. It's not hard. Okay. And it is what it is. We all have our deficiencies. We all have our coping mechanisms. We all have our trauma in the past and this, that, and everything else. And we're all very complex creatures. And, if you live in the public spotlight, you're going to air all that dirty laundry in public. This is why I talk about myself the way I do, to try and let people know. Dexter White gets on my case about this, to be honest with you. He's like, you don't have to put as much of yourself into this as you do. I'm like, actually, no, I think I kind of do. Because if I don't, then when I go out on a fucking limb that I'm the only one out there, you have to know that it's not coming from I'm trying to schmooze you into none of that stuff. This is just who I am. And if I do that with with as much authenticity as possible, okay, then, as who I think I am, and this version of me that is talking to this microphone right now is the best version of me that I can give you, then I know that I did my job, and hopefully it comes across that way when people are watching the freaking videotape. Like, that's the best I can do. And, it's easy to believe the character I play on Twitter is not me, but that's a different person. And that's an aspect of my personality. And I do play a character on Twitter, and that guy is far more of an asshole than even this guy is, right? But it's not that far from the truth either, right?
Well, one of your brilliance, and I think I've brought this up lots with you. One of the brilliant things you've done for me, and I assume others, and I look over your shoulder and I see it. You've gotten me to look at the stories that have been told by the greatest of writers, greatest of minds that the planet has seen. And they've been popularized into movies and motion pictures and songs have spun off of it. There's just been culture spun off of it.
Right.
And I never looked at that seriously. I looked at it as make-believe.
Right.
And through COVID, I noticed something, and it brought me around to your brilliance. And that is, some people will not be changed by the facts. It's such a weird thing to watch. You can lay it all out. You just here it is. That's what it equals. And you've already mentioned it. They just kind of tear it up, throw it in the garbage, and say, get lost. And you're like, but I just gave you all the facts. And so what some of the greatest writers have done is, instead of giving you the facts as today would show them, they put it in this larger than almost believable world. And they seed it in there. And it took COVID and watching people to make me run into Tom Luongo. And then Tom starts talking about Star Wars. I always chuckle. I'm like, no, I think, at times I fully don't comprehend everything that Star Wars has done. And I keep bringing up, and I brought it up with EM again, that The Godfather, as a young man, I didn't get it. And now as I get older, I'm like, oh my God. There's just so much in there. The loyalty test is in there.
Yep, it is.
And you think you have these tight circles, but then something's going on. You can't understand it. So what do? You see and you see it play through some of the greatest works. It's in there. And you have shown that. And I think that's one of your brilliant markers of bringing it down to just a regular day guy who's, you've been to Lloyd. Is there, I'm just a family guy. Sit around. I talk to people, and it's seeing the similarities of all of you that are talking about these issues and trying to consolidate into something simple that my brain can understand. And then if I add in some of the great works, I'm like, oh my God, it's all right here.
Yep.
Now you have to apply that to the world and what is happening, because people want you to operate in fear, which shuts you down. It's like, well, World War III is kicking off. Everything's getting blown up, and better go hide in a hole. Yep. Or it's so intense, don't pay attention to it. Just go to the Oiler game and just carry on with life, and there's nothing wrong.
So funny last night, right? I was when all this stuff was popping off with Trump drunk tweeting like mad to death. That's the way I looked at it last night. Not that I know Trump doesn't drink, but they came across as Trump drunk tweeting, right? In my mind, they were deadly serious. I don't mean to make light of them, but It's the same thing with Dmitry Medvedev. He's the guy on the Russian side that just goes out and drunk tweets about random stuff. And you're not supposed to really take him very seriously, but there's a nugget of truth in there that you should take very seriously.
And you should be paying attention to.
You should be paying attention to, but don't overthink it. It's not, don't parse it word for word, Spurgs. There's a bigger game here. But I was like, the phone is blowing up. I'm chatting with people left and right, trying to figure out what's going on. Oh my God, the balloon's going up, yada, yada, yada. And I stopped doom scrolling my Twitter feed after about half an hour. And I'm like, you know what? Nothing I'm going to do is going to change anything. And nothing's going to happen for the next couple of hours. I'm going to play World of Warcraft. I play World of Warcraft. One of my friends one of my patrons / friends logs in. We're sitting there chatting about some of the stuff while I'm, doing the thing. And then Dexter calls in the middle of it. You say with an honest question, are you seeing anything any more real than what I'm seeing? I'm like, or have you heard anything? I'm like, not really. He's like, well, I'm like, no, dude, I didn't see anything new, and I just said I just jacked out and said I'm playing WoW, and he went, that seems like the most rational response to the entire thing. Like, there are times when it's out of your control. We want to make sense of things because making sense, having a thesis, okay, gives you comfort and gives you the illusion of control, which is why so many people are holding on to their old frameworks of how they see the world, because it's hard to be out in the I'm not sure. And so then you have to be sure in yourself about who you are in order to be able to live in a world of complexity and uncertainty. And I get that. And I don't blame. I was saying this we were chatting about a lot of this stuff this morning on my Slack server. And I said, look, I don't expect y'all to not emotionally overreact to this stuff. You're supposed to. You're here because you're not a pro, right? I'm supposed to be the pro. I'm supposed to be the one who sets back and tries to make sense of everything for everybody. I'm the one who has to take my emotions out of it as best as I can. What rankles my tits is that I'm watching pros melt down, and then you realize they're not pros. That's what I mean about Doug McGregor when I called him an old doomer boomer, getting bad information. Doug clearly, when he first hit the scene, I really liked everything about him. And then it became obvious that at some point that he could be fed bad information and he would use it and he would repeat it quickly and ad nauseum, thinking it was real. He had sources he trusted that fed him bad information because he's been wrong about so many freaking things. And the record was clear. The longer the Russia-Ukraine war went on, the more he was wrong. Tucker's the same way. Tucker came out the other day, and I watched an interview with him. I watched him talking with somebody the other day. He's like, I don't actually do any work anymore. I just call people in and have conversations with them, and that's how I get most of my news. I'm like, yeah, that's clearly obvious because your point of view now is shaped by the very people you're bringing on the show. And you're not doing any independent analysis. And he's gone off the rails. And now he's got an idea in his head about how the world operates. And Tucker Carlson is supposed to be a guy with a staff and all this experience and everything else. And we're like, how did you miss this? How are you so off the rails?
I can add some insight into that. I think, as sitting here, I've said that exact same line roughly, probably not on air, but to people close to me about, not that I don't work anymore, but what I do is I sit down and have conversations with people, right? Mm-hmm. That's what you're doing. The thing about Tucker, where he's at, I'm sure there is 1 million people that want to get on that show.
Sure.
And you would defer to somebody, you get these high profile people coming on. You have these wild, he can talk to anyone he wants to.
Yeah. Just talk to Vladimir Putin.
Right.
Hey, dude. Yeah.
And yet when I listened to the Putin interview, man, that annoyed me. And it reminded me that Tucker is just another human being like me.
Yep.
Because he walked in, he thought he had the answer. He knew what he wanted to. He walked in with a game plan of what questions he wanted to ask and everything else. And Putin walked in with a game plan of like,
And blew
I'm
it up.
going to tell you the story. Just listen. That's all you got to do. Tucker literally said they had no time frame. And so my brain goes, shut up and let him talk for 4 hours if that's what he wants, and then ask your questions.
Yeah.
Instead, if you listen to that interview, and he came out after saying, I think Putin was honest, right? But no shit,
Mhm.
he was honest. He's literally trying to give you their point of view. So all you
Mhm.
had to do is sit and listen. But if you listen to the Tucker interview, you're like, just let him talk.
Yep.
You got the most demonized leader on the global stage giving
Mhm.
you an unlimited time? Tom, that is like gold to my ears. All right, sit down. You want to tell me a story? That's what
Tell
we're
me a
here
story.
for.
Yeah.
Let's
No, I know.
let the American people hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I know. And to Tucker's credit, for the first half an hour, he did let Putin do exactly that. And people didn't like what Putin said and why he did what he did. But he's very Russian and he's very pedantic, and he gave everybody
But I listened to it, and
I loved every second of it. I knew so much. Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, when I look at the Tuckers of the world, they're in a different world than me, right? They're
Mhm.
playing in the NHL. Hell, they're a star forward on any of the teams.
Right.
He's a top 5 player in the
Right.
entire league.
Mm-hmm.
But the interesting thing about talking to people is sometimes like you should never walk into any one podcast with Tom, with anyone, and go, these guys know everything. No, you got to use discernment. You got to sit there and listen. Go, yeah, but that doesn't match what I just heard over there. Now I
Mm-hmm.
got to go think about that. Now I got to go wrestle with that. Maybe I got to go do a little
I
research.
got to push back on him a little bit, or I got to do this, or I got to do that, and that's fine. I fully embrace that model. Like, as long as it's not adversarial, I'm fine. Like, you can, that's fine. I'm good.
100%. But you think Tucker is that guy? He pushes back on everyone. Watch him.
Mhm.
On a whole bunch of people. He pushes
Right.
back on everything. Gets Trump in, never pushes back once. Like,
Mhm.
he's maybe a little bit nervous, and rightfully so. It's Donald Trump.
Right.
He gets in front of Putin. It should be adversarial. This guy is supposedly the leader of, the next group that's going to try and take over the entire world. There is understanding of like where he's at. But you think like Connor
But
McDavid doesn't have problems in the NHL, or doesn't get nerves, or is supposed to play, and the other team isn't going to try and shut him down?
okay, what I think, with Tucker, what I was getting at was that he needs to be independently researching,
He
and
has to.
he has to be on his game to be able to push back. And in the Putin interview, he didn't look like he was he didn't look like he was on his game. Putin ran rings around him. He did. And which is fine, but what I was getting at is that I think that, you can't get so complacent that you don't actually do the work. Part of the reason why I do the podcast that I do, and part of the reason why I like to talk to I actually have come to really enjoy doing 3-way conversations with the host and a couple other guests, and especially meeting a new person for the first time. I love meeting a new person for the first time in the presence of a moderator, because that moderates my behavior. So now I find myself having to listen a lot more closely. And that's just a fault. We all have our faults and our deficits, folks. It is what it is. If you don't like it, piss off. This is who I am. No, I'm not going to change it. I can just moderate it as best I can. But I do that because now I'm now having, a more effective and interesting conversation I did in the past. You get to uncover where people's blind spots are. They get to uncover where your blind spots are. There's a variety of things that occur there. And as long as it's collegiate, it's great. But I get people all the time. They ask me, well, why don't you have Peter Schiff on your podcast? I'm like, why? Because so I can yell at him for an hour and a half. Like, is that what you want? Like, I'm not. That's not my bag, man. I'm not doing it. I'm not. I'm just not going to do it, because I don't want. That's not the space I want to live in. I don't do debates, not because I'm not capable of debating my points, because I think debates are a stupid fucking format that only reinforce the whole team A, team blue, team red thing. Like, your team, my team. I don't want to play the your team, my team thing. That's not what I'm here for. We're here to uncover truth, right? We're here to work out the edges of information, right? And
So would you say Cornerstone 2026?
Mhm.
I've been contemplating. Actually, I would say more than contemplating. I have it written down in the schedule. I've been building my schedule up.
Sure.
And I have this year or next year a debate scheduled. And the debate is around China because what I see in Canada is infiltration from China. And then
Sure.
what I hear in different talks is China isn't that bad. I'm like, well,
Mm.
it might come back to your thought process on Israel. You can simultaneously be the victim, the hero,
And the villain.
and the villain. Thank you.
Mhm.
And
Hero,
I'm like,
victim, villain.
I want to get to I want to have this out. I'm tired of China's good or China's bad
Mhm.
because what you're telling me is that it can all simultaneously be true. And I would
Mhm.
like to have that on stage. Do you think that's a terrible
I
idea?
think no, I think that would be fine as long as you go in, as long as you structure it in such a way that it's like if you need to do it with just two people and the moderator as opposed to three, like we normally do the three person panels, which are hard to get everybody.
Yes.
Those are hard, I mean, unless they're an hour long. I was just at a couple of 1 hour three-way roundtables over the weekend at a Bitcoin conference down in Tampa, which went very well. But I was also, in both of those panels, it was like there's Tom and there's these two other guys, and they kind of set it up that way, so that I could, I knew I was allowed to dominate the conversation ultimately, and I could pass it back and forth to the other guys who have specific knowledge in particular areas in order to support, because what they knew they wanted me, we already knew what information they wanted me to present. So then it was, those panels were designed that way. But if you want to have an honest to God, two people who have fundamentally different perspectives on Chinese influence within Canada, yeah, as long as it's a collegiate thing where they're
Which
going back and forth.
I would want nothing more than that, right?
Right.
Is
As
like,
long as you as the moderator are going to, or whoever the moderator is, has to also be very knowledgeable about the situation to be able to keep the whole thing from going off the rails. So you can't have someone who doesn't know the material. Like,
Very
for
good point.
example, right? So, for example, you could have Matt Arrett on one side and Alex on the other, and I get to be the moderator, for example, because I know just enough about China to be dangerous, but not enough about China, right? To, or even better, like I could tell you, like you want fire, Dexter White and Matt Arrett having a collegiate conversation about China. That would be a good one because they have very different views on China, but they also have a lot of overlap. So it would be a very good conversation, right? That kind of thing. So, I mean, I don't know that we need to talk much more about how the sausage is made, but you know what I mean?
You're
In
just
public,
talking
but
about,
you know what I mean?
just that a debate, that's what spurred it on, was the thought
Of
around
course,
a debate.
of course.
Because one of the things I enjoy about differing views in a
Mhm.
realm, we're not attacking the person, we're attacking
Right.
the ideas.
Sure. Right.
Is as an audience member, when I listen, I'm like, then you can start to see the holes. And once you see the holes, then you got to go address the holes. Because if you don't
Yes.
address the holes, then there's just problems.
Well, and again, let's round this up and like kind of like put a bow on the entire podcast. This is all I did in the opening of this podcast. I was addressing all the holes in everybody's arguments about what was actually happening between Iran and Israel. All the little things that people missed in their response to this, in the gaslit response to all of this. Okay. And I'm not saying I'm right. Okay. Or I'm not saying this is how it's going to work out. And I can tell you that I could turn out to be right and the situation could go completely off the rails. Those two things can be true simultaneously. In the end, that could wind up being the case. These are all, everything I've laid out in this podcast about this thing this is exactly, I could be true. Let's just say 90% true, right? Great. And then someone could still make a mistake. And that chance for the outcome that I laid out goes away. History is littered with those moments. And that doesn't mean that Trump betrayed us or anything else. It means that Trump wasn't able to contain the chaos. Maybe he makes a mistake. That doesn't mean that his intentions weren't good. Like, we're at this point where, and I get it. I get why people are so anxious about this. I get it. I'm anxious about it, guys. Don't think I'm not. Which is to say that, like, we're dealing with an unbelievable stakes here. We are. We're dealing with unbelievable stakes. But, at a certain point, that's how conflicts can resolve themselves. By everybody having to stare into the abyss simultaneously and go, is this what you want? Really? Because there ain't going to be a you after this is over. There ain't going to be a you after this is over. Go back to war games. Teaching the computer how to play tic-tac-toe. Right? Which was the message of the movie. It's an interesting game. The only winning play is to not play, is to not sit down and play. The only winning move is to not play. Right? So I don't know that I have any answers here for anybody, but I would like everybody to take a step back and be a little generous as opposed to indulging their anxiety. Because what I'm seeing from a lot of people is fear. Either fear of their own reputation or fear that Trump's going to fuck it up or this or that or anything else. All those fears are honest. All those fears are real. Sorry. Some of them are honest. I fear that Trump's not going to be strong enough to get it done. That Putin and he and anybody else that they've drafted to their side to get it done. There's a lot of coping mechanisms out there. Oh, yeah. Israel's just all powerful and owns Trump's leash. Yeah, that's a coping mechanism. Because what happens if Trump fails, they can say, see, I told you so. Well, that's nice. You feel better. That you were, okay, so you're going to feel better right before the friggin' flash? Great. That's nice. Or you could be wrong. And then what are you going to do? Oh, I was right all the time. And then I was like, look, I said I don't know if I said it the last time I was on the show with you and Alex, but I've been saying it in a couple other podcasts that I've done. I see a lot of people who have a framework in the alternative media space, financial, geopolitical, cultural, and everything else, in all vectors, that are wedded to unworkable and unreal frameworks. And there's going to be an awful lot of roadkill by the side of the road when this is all done. So what I'm saying to you is I'm doing this as best as I can to see what I see. And we'll see how it plays out. And let's hope it plays out well. Because if you're focused, what did I say at the Cornerstone? Your focus determines your reality. 5 most profound words anybody ever said in the friggin' movie, ever. A lot of people are focusing in order to create a reality that someone else wants. Stop focusing on that. Focus on how we can get out of this. And a lot of people are out there saying, Trump, don't go to war on behalf of Israel. So far, he hasn't done so. No matter how much the people on the other side are trying to gaslight them into believing that he is. That's what I see. Your mileage may vary. But as of right now, that's what I see. He still may wind up having to go to war. But that's going to be, the ball will be in Iran's court, which is what he's done. He's put the ball in Iran's court. He's put the ball in the IRGC's court. If the Israelis have full air superiority, flying combat air patrol over Tehran, is the way it looks. If that's true, and not AI, if that's true, they can take out Fordow. They don't need the bunker, but they don't need B-2s and bunker busters. They can just starve those guys out. They can just put commandos in once the rest of the Iranian resistance, for lack of a better term, is destroyed. And then you go in and you clean that shit up on the ground. Right? That's possible. That's a possible solution that no one's talking about. But strategically, that's the one that makes most sense. And Trump doesn't have to commit a troop to that. Does he?
Tom, appreciate you coming on. And to all wanting Alex to have some insights here, we're working on it. Hopefully next week we'll have both of you back.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, when you said it's always good to have a new person, I had Alex on with Rebecca Koffler,
Right.
And I think for most people, that was a fascinating conversation because they both agreed similarly, but not identical. And to have those two go back and forth was very fascinating for me. And I think for a lot of people who listened to it, two Eastern Europeans, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, it's great. I mean, Alex and I get on podcasts together. We don't agree on anything. We don't agree on stuff all the time because Alex didn't see what I saw, or I missed something that he saw, and then we like bandy it back.
Yeah,
and
but
forth.
what people do appreciate, or at least I appreciate, is it's in good faith. It's in there's a very high respect between the two of you. You can see
absolutely. Oh yeah,
right?
no, absolutely. I think Alex is one of the most. I don't think Alex is one of those guys that's going to be roadkill in 6 months. At all. I think Alex is doing brilliant work. We told him to work a little bit less at Cornerstone because he's working too hard. But dude, take a day off every once in a while. You need it. And I know that he's one of the finest human beings I've ever met. Period.
Yeah. Period. Tom, thanks again.